I'm 81 years old, and anger is the reason I lost more than I ever meant to. When you reach this age, you start remembering the moments you wish you could take back, not the big things people talk about, not the career decisions or the money mistakes. I'm talking about the small moments when anger took the wheel for just a few minutes and the damage stayed for years. At the time, it never felt like a big deal. You tell yourself you're just blowing off steam. You think people will understand. You assume everything will calm down later. But life doesn't always give you a later. I learnt that slowly, too slowly. When I was younger, anger felt powerful. It made me feel like I was standing up for myself. Like I wasn't the kind of man who got pushed around. I had a job at a machine shop in my 20s, long hours, loud machines, everybody tired all the time. You come home with grease on your hands and pressure in your chest. Little things start bothering you more than they should. One evening my wife asked why I was late again. She wasn't yelling, she just sounded tired. But I heard criticism, so I snapped. I said things a husband shouldn't say to someone who's been waiting for him all day. Nothing dramatic, no shouting that the neighbors could hear, just sharp words, cold ones, words that stay in a room long after you've said them. That was the first mistake I kept repeating without realizing it. Speaking while anger was still hot. Anger is fast. It pushes words out of your mouth before your mind has caught up. And once those words land, you don't get to gather them back up again. I thought apologies fixed things. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Over time, I made another mistake. I started making decisions while I was angry. It's strange how convincing anger can be. You feel absolutely certain in those moments. Certain that you're right. Certain that the other person deserves it. Certain that walking away, quitting something, cutting someone off, is the right move. But anger is a terrible advisor. I once quit a good position after an argument with my supervisor. Stormed out before lunch. At the time it felt like dignity. Later, it felt like foolishness. My family felt that decision more than I did. Another mistake I made was trying to win arguments instead of understanding people. Winning feels good for about 10 minutes. Understanding someone can save a relationship for decades. But young men, especially men like I used to be, often choose the 10 minutes. I remember arguing with my brother one Thanksgiving. Something small, something stupid. Politics maybe. Or money. We went back and forth across the table while everyone else sat quiet. I made sure I had the last word. I made sure I was right. What I didn't realize was that I'd just turned a holiday into something people would remember for the wrong reason. My brother and I didn't speak for almost 3 years after that. 3 years gone because neither of us wanted to step back while we were angry. Anger likes pride. They work well together. Another thing anger does is make you forget who you're speaking to. When you're angry, the person in front of you becomes the problem. Not your wife, not your friend, not your son, just the problem. I remember once raising my voice at my oldest boy when he was maybe 16. He had dented the car. It was an accident. I knew that, but I came home already irritated from work, and when I saw that dent, I unloaded everything. Every frustration from the day, every stress I'd been carrying. He stood there quietly while I talked, didn't argue, didn't defend himself, just stood there. Later that night I realized something. He hadn't just been listening. He had been learning what his father sounded like when he lost control. That bothered me more than the dent ever did. Anger also has a way of dragging other people into it. You start an argument with one person and suddenly the whole house feels tense. The air changes. Everyone walks a little quieter. I used to think those moments disappeared once the argument ended. But children remember, spouses remember, friends remember. They may forgive you, but they don't forget how it felt. Another mistake I made was assuming anger meant honesty. People say things like, "I was just being honest." But anger isn't honesty. It's exaggeration. It's frustration, wearing the mask of truth. When you're angry, you say things bigger and harsher than you actually mean. You turn small issues into permanent accusations. You always do this. You never care. Nothing you do is right. Those words echo, even when the anger fades. I remember saying something like that to my wife during an argument in our 40s. Something careless, something unfair. She didn't yell back. She just looked tired. Not angry, tired. That look stayed with me longer than the argument. Anger also tricks you into thinking silence will solve things. So sometimes I didn't explode. Sometimes I shut down instead. Didn't talk, didn't explain, just walked around the house quiet and cold. I thought that was control, but silence can hurt people just as much as shouting, maybe more, because the other person sits there wondering what they did and whether it will ever get fixed. Years pass quickly when you're living that way. Anger in short bursts, silence in between. You tell yourself relationships survive it, and many do, but they don't stay exactly the same. Something small wears away every time. Trust, comfort, ease, those things fade quietly. The moment that finally made me understand all this came late. Later than I wish it had. My wife got sick when we were both in our 70s. Nothing dramatic at first. Doctor visits, medication, slow changes. One evening we were sitting in the living room together, quiet house, television on low. She looked at me and said something simple. She said, "You always calm down eventually." That was it, not an accusation, not bitterness, just an observation. But it hit me harder than any argument we'd ever had, because she was right. Eventually I calmed down. Eventually I apologized. Eventually things returned to normal. But eventually doesn't erase the moment that came before it. Eventually doesn't return the feeling someone had when they were standing in front of your anger. And eventually doesn't give people back the peace you took away for a while. She passed away 2 years after that conversation. Now when I sit alone in the house we shared, I think about those moments more than anything else. Not the big milestones, not the vacations, the arguments, the sharp words, the tension that didn't have to exist. You start wondering what the house would have felt like if you had handled anger differently. Quieter, slower, kinder. There are things you can fix in life. Broken furniture, money problems, career mistakes. Those can be repaired with time. But the emotional weight people carry from our anger, that's harder, sometimes impossible. So if you're listening to this and you're younger than I am, I won't tell you what you must do. I don't have that authority. But I will tell you what I wish I had understood earlier. Anger passes, almost always. What doesn't pass are the words you choose while it's there. Pause longer than you think you need to. Walk away if you must. Let the heat leave the room before you speak, not because you're weak, but because relationships are fragile in ways we only understand when it's too late. I'm 81 now, my days are quieter, my temper is calmer. Age does that to you. But sometimes I wish calm had arrived sooner, because there were people in my life who deserved the calm version of me long before they got it. If this story meant something to you, hold your patience a little tighter the next time anger shows up. It might save something you didn't even realize was at risk. As for me, I spend a lot of evenings in this quiet house, remembering the moments I wish I had simply taken a breath and said nothing at all.